So here we have problem 2 in the Chapter 7 homework. You're asked to prepare a cash budget for each quarter in the year and also to total the quarterly amounts up into the year column. So I'm showing my numbers, but of course your numbers will be different. Up here at the top, we're given the total amounts of cash receipts and cash disbursements for each quarter. And we're also told the company's beginning cash balance of $35,000, which we'll go ahead and put here in this cell for the first quarter. And then what we'll do is put in each quarter's cash receipts into the total cash receipts row, and also put in each quarter's cash disbursements in that row. And then of course add the receipts and subtract the disbursements. Then we're going to come up with a figure in this row, either an excess amount of cash, as we have here in the second through fourth quarters, or a deficiency of cash indicated by a negative number. And this happens, of course, when our expected total cash disbursements are greater than the cash we have available. So anytime we come up short, we're going to have to borrow money. And we're going to indicate that down here in the financing section. In the financing section, we're going to show borrowings and repayments, as well as interest. And this company, it requires a minimum cash balance of $10,000. It says that up here at the top. In addition, when it needs to borrow, it must do so in increments. Actually, this particular cash budget doesn't require that amounts borrowed be in even amounts. So we don't have to worry about that. We can borrow exactly what we need. Although down here you'll see we need to borrow $33,000 in order to offset this deficiency in cash and end up with an ending cash balance equal to our minimum requirement. This ending cash balance then becomes the beginning cash balance in the second quarter, and we begin again adding our cash receipts and subtracting our total cash disbursements. So remember, with these cash budgets in Connect, and actually in the real world too, we always want to pay back loans whenever we can in order to minimize our interest charges. So here in the second quarter, we end up with $102,000 in excess cash. So we should go ahead and pay back this $33,000 loan. And you'll see that the way Connect has this problem formatted, we're going to put the principal amount of the loan, the $33,000, in the repayment cell. And then we're going to put the interest into a separate cell. And the way that Connect is presenting the interest rate, it's stating specifically that it's a quarterly interest rate. Usually a rate is just given without any sort of description, and you can assume it's an annual rate of interest. But because they've explicitly stated that it's a quarterly interest rate, then we need to go with that. And also remember that we're going to assume that any amounts borrowed are borrowed at the beginning of the period, and when they're repaid at the end of a period. That means we're going to have to pay 2 quarters worth of interest, or 2 quarters. So the $33,000 borrowed, we'll assume we borrowed at the beginning of the first quarter, and when we repay it in the second quarter, it will be at the end of the second quarter. So that's 2 quarters worth of interest. Again, the interest rate is 3% per quarter. So we can either say that we're going to pay 6% total interest, or we can multiply the $33,000 by 3% and then multiply by 2 quarters. Either way, the total amount of interest is going to be $1,980, and both the principal that we're repaying plus the interest we're going to put those amounts in parentheses because we're indicating an outflow of cash for both of these amounts. Because of course, when we pay back loans and we pay back interest, that reduces our cash balance. So in this cell, we're putting the subtotal, the total of these two amounts, and then we're subtracting this subtotal from the $102,000 in excess cash to get to our ending cash balance. And we can see, again, we're meeting that minimum ending cash balance requirement of $10,000. So for the rest of this cash budget, it's straightforward. We don't have any more loans to pay back, and we don't have to borrow any more money. So we'll put zeros into this total line for the financing section. And then the final step is to complete the year column. We'll add this $35,000 beginning cash balance in the first quarter. Well, we won't add it, but we'll put it into the year column because for the entire year, that was our beginning cash balance. But for the total cash receipts, we're going to add these numbers across and put the total here. For our total cash available, we won't add these numbers across because each of these includes the beginning cash balance. Instead, we're just going to add this totals column down. So the $35,000 plus the total cash receipts equals the total cash available for the year. We will, however, add across our total cash disbursements for each quarter and put the total here. And then to get this amount, the excess of cash available over disbursements for the year, we're going to take the $1,475,000 and subtract the total cash disbursements. Then we're going to transfer our borrowings, repayments, and interest amounts into the year column. Then finally take the $133,000, add this amount, subtract these amounts, and here at the very end, we're going to put our ending cash balance. In between, we'll put the subtotal for the financing section. And you'll notice that the subtotal is just the amount of the interest charges we're paying. Because the $33,000 we borrowed, less the $33,000 repaid, these offset each other to zero. So it's just the interest that's going here in the year column for the total financing section. And finally, you'll notice that the ending cash balance of $131,020, that agrees with the ending cash balance in the fourth quarter column.